The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our MWF webinar this week. My name is Tanya, and I'm the Marketing Manager over here at Struxsoft Solutions. For those of you who are new with us today, Panel Stacker acts as an extension to our principal software, MWF, which stands for Metal Wood Framer. MWF is our automated Revit wall, floor, ceiling, and truss framing software for like-gauge steel and also wood modeling. Today, our senior technician, Christina, will be demonstrating how to organize wall or floor panels into zones which can then be stacked and optimized based on shipping criteria. Once completed, they can then be organized onto trucks according to how they will be unloaded on site for easy assembly. Just a few housekeeping items before we start. At the end of the webinar, we'll be taking a few live questions. In order to be selected, please press the raise hand button on the control panel, and please make sure that your computer audio is working correctly. If you'd prefer, you can also ask questions throughout the webinar in the questions tab of the GoToWebinar dashboard. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to hand off to Christina now.
All right, hey everyone, thanks Tanya. So for today's webinar, we're primarily going to focus on Panel Stacker and go through all of the main options. And for anyone who's not familiar with Panel Stacker, it's essentially an add-in to MWF, comes in external tools. You go ahead and launch that, and you'll get the actual Panel Stacker menu ribbon. So essentially just an add-in to the software that you can use to bundle panels together. You can then see how those bundles would load onto a truck, and an extension that you guys could always add in for transportation once you finished panelizing everything with MWF. So to get started, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of work through left to right here on the ribbon. So before even getting started with Panel Stacker, there's a few options in the settings to run through just to get it set up. So the first one being, let's go to the Options tab. And for the actual bundles themselves, you'll see a bit later on that an actual generic object representing a bundle gets placed in your floor plan view. So this is just some items that you want to display on that bundle. So you can put the bundle name, the panel names that are in that bundle, and then the pack name, which I'll get into what that is in a bit. But basically, you can display all these three options on the bundle directly in your floor plan. The next main element I'd say in the settings is the panel selection. So you'll see when we get into the actual bundling tool that you can have Revit working live in the background. So you can manually select panels from a Revit plan directly, and not necessarily through the bundling tables. But basically just the option to grab your panels. If you're going to mass select a few of them at a time, then you have the three traditional ways that we have for making these panels. So you can grab the label, you can grab any panel member, it'll grab the entire panel, or you could also grab the panel host, which is just the Revit wall. So when we select panels to place into bundles, my personal preference is just only having the panel label selected. It's basically going to ensure that you're having the exact panels that you want. You won't accidentally select maybe a neighboring wall or neighboring panels that are close by. So if you are going to go with Revit-based selection, I definitely recommend the panel label option, just so you can see exactly what you're selecting. So I'll get into this option in a bit and you'll see exactly what I mean. So the next main thing I'd say in these settings is the reports directory. So when all of the panels are done, they all have their own shop drawings. Those shop drawings can obviously be printed to PDF with Revit. And after that, you could create a link between Panel Stacker directly to those PDF drawings. So to give you guys an idea, I have all of my shop drawings saved as individual PDFs. So this is just done with regular MWF, printed to PDF with Revit. And they're all listed here by their panel numbers. So basically with Panel Stacker, you create a direct route to this path, and then you can go ahead and search by name, and that'll just run through all of these PDFs and match them to their subsequent panels. So you'll see later on where that's going to come in, but this will basically enable you guys to create the reports, have it available in your bundling table, and just have the PDFs linked directly into Panel Stacker themselves. So I've already got it set up in that regard. And after the reports directory, I'd say the next most important option, just to be aware of, there we go, is this Recache working set. So what this is going to enable you guys to do is if you do make changes to the panels, if something does change over time, length, height, weight of the panel, then basically this will just be like a giant regenerate for Panel Stacker. It'll refresh the entire project so that your panels are up to date in Panel Stacker. And I'll talk about set in just a minute. But just so you guys are aware, this is just so that data that gets stored in Panel Stacker from the panels is refreshed if ever you do make any changes post shop drawings. So I'd say these are the main options just to get generally set up with Panel Stacker. There's obviously a few other options in here. If you want to include or disable sheathing in Panel Stacker, the units that you want to use. So just some general setup options and also a nice little video tutorial built directly in the software itself. So once your settings are good to go, the next thing I would definitely say that you can create are areas. So areas aren't a necessity in Panel Stacker, but they're just another filter that you can use to group these bundles together. So basically, once you do start creating your bundles, you can assign them to specific areas. So if you did want to filter out and just see maybe your bundles in a particular unit, in this case, in a particular area, it's another filter that you can apply. So it's super simple to create these areas. I'm just going to go ahead and draw these model lines. So these are just Revit model lines around my northeast unit over here. And once you have a closed loop, you can go ahead and say create. We'll create a new area. And then you're just giving this guy a name. You can choose your pattern, you can choose your coloring, the text sizes for the actual label. And most importantly, if you did decide to choose areas, you can have those areas span multiple levels. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be on the, in this case, you can have it span to any level in your Revit project. So let's go ahead and say create. We'll get our hatching, our labeling, and all that's included when we go ahead and run the bundling tool. All right. So now we're on to kind of the main options, the working sets, and then the bundling tool. So the working set is, again, just another way that you can select your panels by basically just selecting by the working set. So by default, you can just select all of your panels. So if I go ahead and open up the bundling table, it'll bring in all the panels for my entire project. You can do the panels in the current view that you're working on. You can run it by selection again. Or if you do have bundles, you can just grab panels that have been bundled or not bundled. Both of those filters are there. So in this case, I'm going to focus on just the Northeast unit and make a few bundles for that today. So just so I don't load all of my panels in my bundling tool, I'm going to go ahead and run by selected panel. And let's go ahead and just select this corner. Again, I'm just grabbing the labeling. There we go. Looks like all of my panels are selected in this unit. And last thing I'll just bring up as well is that there is this option to refetch. So refetch is something, again, that you can turn on or off. But basically, it's just going to keep your panels up to date and always load in the current project data into Panel Stacker. If you're using the dynamic filters, which is basically you're just choosing by selection, or you're using some filters to grab your panels, then we usually recommend to leave this selected. But because it's always refreshing and pulling the panel information that's most current, if you did leave this unselected your projects, it will speed things up quite a bit. But again, just make sure that all of your panels are up to date. If you haven't made any changes, if they're completely finalized, then you can always leave this unselected. And I'll also just point out that throughout Panel Stacker, if you're unsure what a command does, you can always leave your mouse on there long enough and you'll get a tech tip. So let's go ahead and actually launch the bundling tool, or Panel Stacker in essence. And it's going to look a little crowded on one monitor. Definitely if you have two monitors, it'll make your life a lot easier, but we'll do what we can today. And I'll just go through these windows one by one, explain what each of them do, and then we'll go ahead and start creating our bundles. So the first main window over here is the Management Center. So the Management Center is where you'll come back to over and over again. It's where you'll create the bundles, where you can assign panels to your bundle, where we'll start creating the packs as well, and where you create the templates, which I'll touch on in a bit. But basically, to create these main things in Panel Stacker, you'll always come and create them in the Management Center. The next main window, I'd say after that, is the bundling table. And the bundling table, you're not necessarily going to create anything in here, but it will give you basically all of your project information in a table format. So you can see here that you'll have all of your areas listed. It'll say which levels they cover. If we go to the walls, this is where the bundling table is really going to come in handy. So I just selected my panels from my northeast unit over here. So I've got about 69 of those. But you'll see all the panels that you grabbed, in this case that I've selected. They'll have a sequence number, which I'll talk about in a bit. But they basically will show the length, the height, the thickness of that structural layer. So it's just pulling all those parameters from the project. You get the weight of the overall panel, just pulling from the Revit families that you're using, what level it's on, if it's been sheathed. And probably the most useful thing in here is that direct link to your shop drawing. So this is where that reports directory, where part of that is going to come in. You can see here, you can just click on the link and it'll just go ahead and open up the PDF version of that shop drawing. So pretty cool. You'll be able to kind of go through these. If ever you're unsure of which panel this is, you could always go ahead and open up the drawing. So all my wall panels are listed just based on the ones that I selected. This does work with floors as well. I don't have any floor panels in here, but if I did, they'd populate in this tab. And you'll also see all the bundles that you've created in this list, any packs you've created, and you'll also see all of the subsequent templates that you've created as well. So let's go ahead and start creating our first bundle. And to do that, we're going to go back into the Management Center. We'll say Create New, give your bundle a name. And the first thing you're going to want to do is assign some kind of bundle constraints. So this is where the templates can start coming in. You can put the constraints in manually for each bundle, but if you do reuse a lot of the same constraints, you can create a template for that. So in the Management Center, you can go to your Templates tab, say Create New, give the constraint a name, and then just put in all of your bundle constraints. Weight is included in this as well. So if you do obviously have any kind of weight constraint for the crane, any width or length restraints for the truck, you can go ahead and create those here. So just for today, I'm going to create these guys on the fly and just give some arbitrary constraints. And now that I've got these bundle constraints, if I actually go to my stacker window, you can see here it'll just show that cube that I have for my constraints, but it'll at least give you a physical view of the size of those constraints. And now we can go ahead and start assigning panels. So to assign your panels, basically have two main options. You can assign from the bundling table. So you can actually have the table open right next to it, click the panels that you want, and assign it directly from here. Or if you wanted to as well, Revit is still active in the background. So you can go around and click, grab your panel labels, and just assign from Revit. So both options are fine. It's going to depend on the workflow. In this case, my bundle 1 I know is in my northeast unit. So I'm going to go ahead and assign that area. And again, the areas are optional. It's just another filter that I'm applying to this bundle so I can orient it a little bit better on my floor plan. So for the actual panels themselves, I could click around if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and use the bundling table for this. And what is actually pretty useful with this bundling table is that you can apply filters to this. So I've got 3 different panel heights. So I'll create a bundle first with maybe just my 10-foot panels. So it'll limit the panels for that height. Can go ahead and select them from my table. And then over to the management center, I'm going to go ahead and assign those bundles. So my bundles are now part of, or my panels are now part of this bundle. You can see that they'll take on that parameter here. And since I also have an area associated, it'll take that on too. And if we go to the actual stacker window, you can get a 3D view of what your panels are going to look like. And you could also cycle through different elevation views. If you want to see it from the left side, from the top, you can go through and just really filter out those views. So my constraints in this case are obviously a little large for just my 3 panels. So I'm going to limit this and just constrain it from the overall. So just from the overall dimensions of all of my panels. And now I can go ahead and say stack. And the basic stack feature will just basically line them up in the bottom left corner. So I can see this is the track side of my panel. And it'll just stack them from largest panel to smallest. And you've also got your 3D view off to the side over here. So you can use the regular stack option. It'll just look at the dimensions of the panel. But we do have an option now to stack by sequence. This is something relatively new. But basically, if I go back in here to my table, you can see that every panel has a sequence number. And that sequence number is literally just the panel number. So if you did want to stack it by sequence, if you've got a particular panel numbering, it'll just stack from the largest number at the bottom to the smallest number on top, regardless of the size. So you can stack it by sequence if need be, if you've got that specific numbering set up to match panel stacker. I'm just going to use the regular stack, so it's stacking largest to smallest. And let's go ahead and create 3 bundles. Let's go ahead and see my 11-foot height panels now. Create a new bundle again. Put in some arbitrary constraints. And in this case, I've got quite a few panels. So maybe let's sort that by length. And I'll go ahead and go up to the just about 10-foot mark. And let's assign those to my bundle. So let's do from overall again. I'll hit stack. And at this point, not so much in this bundle, but maybe in my bundle 1, if I did stack it by sequence, I'd have a bit of a gap between there, between my panels. So that is where, if you did want to put in a false panel, that's where that can come in handy. So the false panels are a template again that you make. And basically the false panel are used if you want to place something in your bundle that isn't a regular MWF panel. So if you wanted to put in a palette, if you wanted to put in a layer of foam between your panels, in this case, I just have a basic 6x6 post. And if I did want to put that post, let's say inside my bundle 1, you have an option here to assign a false panel from the bundling table. So you go ahead, go to your bundling table, go to your templates, false panels, highlight that like you would a panel, and just go ahead and assign it, and you'll be able to move it around in your bundle. In this case, it's a pretty even stack, so I'm not going to go ahead and add that in, but if ever you want to place that in your bundles, you can go ahead and add them like you would any other panel. So only other thing I'll say about the bundling is obviously I'm laying my panels down, but if you did want to stand them up, if you did want to change the alignment, move these guys around, you do have options here to change the alignment or to rotate about an axis. So I could always stand my panels up if I wanted to. We've got the options to change the rotation. So you do have a few options there to kind of play around with that. And if you did want to stack your panels up, you can go ahead and do that as well. If there is any kind of specific alignment you wanted to place these panels in, you can always go ahead and drag and drop. It's a little laggy with the go-to running in the background, so sorry about that. But you can always drag your panels around. There's automatic alignment options. So when that's turned on, they'll automatically snap into place like this. So you do have a few options to manually manipulate your bundles. Obviously, doing it this way will be a bit more or a bit less automated than just using the regular stack. But you can always change up how you want your panels to stack together. So let me also go ahead and just create a third bundle. Go back to the bundling table. And let me grab the rest of these panels. Put in our constraints again. You can see that cube pop up in the background. We'll go ahead and assign the panels, run our overall constraints, and let's just go ahead and stack. All right. So we've got our bundle set up. Let's go ahead and just run a quick save. I'll just point out now that our bundles are all saved and stacked, you'll see that generic bundle object, like I mentioned, in your floor plan. So it'll usually pick the spot that's the midpoint out of all the panels you selected. But obviously, if you want to bring these off on site somewhere, you can always drag and drop them and move them wherever you need to. It's just a generic model. You can move around with what you will. All right, so we've got our bundles. Next step is you'd probably want to create the packs so you can see how these bundles would load onto your truck. So we'll go to the packing tab now. It's a lot of the same steps. We'll create a new pack, give it a name, and this time instead of bundle constraints, you can set up actual constraints for your truck. So it's the last template that we have over here. Go ahead and go to the trucks tab. I've already got 2 trucks set up, but you can go ahead and create new. In this case, for the flatbed, you just put in the trailer length, the width, all the parameters. If you did have a step deck as well, you can switch it to that type and just fill in these parameters as well. So basically just creating the constraints for the actual truck. So if we come back to the packing, click on pack 1. Before we assign the bundles to that pack, you want to go ahead and assign the truck first. So let's go ahead and go to the table, templates, go to truck again, and you'll assign it from, in this case, from the bundling table. And I'll just point out that you actually get the dimensions for the truck, and it'll look a lot like the bundle constraints that you'd have. And then from this point on, assigning the bundles are pretty similar to assigning panels. You can actually grab the generic object from Revit and assign it that way. But again, I'll go to the bundling table. I didn't assign areas to my other 2 bundles, but that's okay. Just select these and I've assigned it from the table. Now when you go ahead and open up your stacker, you've got the entire bundle. And you could also see the subsequent panels in this view that are in that bundle. So the bundles are a little trickier to place. But again, if you did want to stand up your packs there, stand up your bundles, you've got the option here to modify that. You can change the axes. And in this case, I'm not sure if bundle 3 will actually fit onto my truck. So I'm actually just going to remove it just for now, remove the selected bundle. And let's go ahead and rotate bundle 2. Just barely. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't think this bundle will fit as well. If I try and rotate it around, it doesn't seem to be giving me any configurations. You can see here that if it doesn't fit onto your actual truck, it'll pop in bright red. So at least you'll have that visual to know that it's not popping in. Okay, that's all right. We'll do a pretty simple pack for now, and I'll get rid of bundle 2. Okay, so the main thing is once you have your bundle set up, once your packs are set up, you can go ahead and save. And in this case, we'll close out of Panel Stacker altogether. And the last thing that you can generate finally are the reports. All right, so let's do all panels. Here we go. So once your bundles are created, you can select specific bundles or just grab all of them in one go. And you can actually export this to PDF or export this to Excel. But what is nice with PDF if I open up the report, basically gives you a summary of the bundle, gives you the wall panels that are in there, gives you the overall table, and it also links in each shop drawing associated to that bundle. So just a basic PDF report that you can generate for all the bundles. And then the other thing that you can generate as well, which is probably the whole reason for generating those packs, is to create a packing slip. So again, if you have multiple packs, you can select them. You can always get a visual as to what is on that truck. And in this case, it'll create a similar shop drawing to what you'd see for your walls. So it'll create a plan view and a drafting view. And it'll place that on an actual Revit sheet. So I'm just going to duplicate my first floor plan. You'll get a similar kind of pop-up to the shop drawings. Just associate your drafting view and your plan view. There is a default A4 sheet that comes out of the box. You can duplicate this, of course, make your own title block. And then, of course, it'll just generate both views and place them onto a sheet. So my scale is a little big. And if you wanted to as well, you can create 2 separate sheets entirely. Put one view on each sheet. Let's maybe change that scale a little bit. But the general idea is to create your plan view. So it'll just isolate your bundles where they are in the floor plan. And it'll also give you a detail of, in this case, my first order pack with the bundles that are on that truck. So that's going to be it for me today. Knows a lot of information, so if any of you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask them now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christina. If you'd like to go ahead and pose a question live, please raise your hand now by clicking on the hand icon in the control panel. Just also please make sure that your audio is working correctly. While we wait for any questions to come through, I'd just like to remind everyone that the recording of the webinar will be sent through shortly after the session has closed. As always, please feel free to share this recording with any colleagues. If you'd like to set up a one-on-one demo, we highly encourage you to reach out to our team. Our contact information will be available in the mailer that will be sent. Our technicians will be able to walk you through how you build and how our MWF modules and extensions will be able to benefit your next project. So I'll just give it a few more seconds to see if anything comes through. All right, it looks like we have a question. All right, German, I'm going to unmute you right now. All right, please go ahead.
Hello, I just have a question about the reports. How would it look like when you export to Excel?
Sure. So when you export to Excel, it's basically just going to create a line with a link to the PDFs, but I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So it's kind of just giving you a summary of all the panels that are in that bundle, kind of a breakdown of what that bundling table looks like, and then in this case, just a link to where the shop drawing PDFs are saved.
Just one more question on creating these bundles.
Mm-hmm.
Does that does that create a metadata on each of these for like in a group for the B1 and B2? Is there something added to the family?
So there's nothing added to, are you talking
Kind of
about
like, kind of like how you have the wall IDs set up for the MWF for each wall comes up. Is there some kind of metadata that becomes attached to identify those groups as bundle 1 and bundle 2 and bundle 3?
Not to the actual families themselves. So if I just maybe click on a member here.
Right, you see the MWF stuff there, the ID and the.
Yeah, that's it. It's not going to reflect in panels. It's not going to reflect in any of the members.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing you can maybe pull is there is some data in this actual bundle, but it's not going to add anything to the actual families themselves.
Okay. When you're doing the bundles, though, it generates a report. It generates drawings for each panel individually. Excuse me, with cut lengths and sizes and all that. In those bundles, is there a way that we can get like a grouped? Instead of having each individual wall, just have all of the walls in one schedule in that bundle.
So are you referring to the actual table itself or in the reports?
I'm actually in the reports, because it goes out to the drawing and it'll show the individual drawing for each individual panel.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, it has all the information in there. It spreads out a little schedule on there with the ID mark and size and cut length and all that stuff. Is there a way that instead of having it go to individual panels, that all those panels can be grouped together to create one whole cut sheet for the whole bundle instead of breaking it up wall by wall?
Unfortunately not. It's gonna still break it up panel by panel just because it's a link to the shop drawings.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I mean that is something you could do with Revit schedules if ever you wanted to pull that in. But yeah, but the report itself, it's just gonna pull each individual shop drawing.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Christina. We're just going to hold on another few seconds to see if anything else comes through. All right. It seems like it's a wrap for today, Christina. For any questions that have not been answered, we'll make sure to get to them today. As well as if you have any questions after the session, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll make sure to get in touch with you. Once again, thank you, Christina, and thank you to everyone who attended the webinar. All right, I'll now be ending the webinar. Thank you very much. Have a great day.